Atari! Now there's a name which has been around for a while. We have to go way back to 1972 to find Atari's real arcade roots, and what we find is the first ever commercially successful video game with Pong. From there, Atari would release many more arcade machines, as well as home consoles and computers, whilst also changing hands several times, right up to the present day. Which brings me on to today's review of Atari Volt, which has been released on Steam today. A quick perusal over the game's listing spiked my interest, especially given that the collection features over 100 of the best Atari games from its arcade and 2600 era, although sadly no ET. But there was a 15% discount as well, so rather than waiting patiently for a Steam sale, I snapped the little blighter up and then proceeded to play the said package. I now therefore present my findings to you in this flyby review. I must say, on initial opening of the game, I was mighty impressed. Not only do you get a slick interface that can be controlled by keyboard and mouse or controller, but you can freaking well spin the arcade cabinets around. Like, right round. Sweet! Then I found out that the flyers and promotional materials from the original arcade machines are also included, all for your perusing pleasure. Over in the Atari 2600 section, I was even more excited to find that you could, yes, rotate the bloody game boxes. And look at all the instruction manuals, yellowing included. It took me some time to get over this initial excitement, but I soon went back to test the games out. Now there's some absolute classics here. It's not an exhaustive collection for sure, but on the arcade front we've got cabs like Asteroids, Centipede, Lunar Lander, Millipede and Sprint, to name a few. On closer inspection of the games, you're provided with a high level of tweakability in the form of control methods, sensitivity and whether you want a graphical overlay around the game. Inside the games, everything is faithfully recreated, and the environment gives you that arcade feeling, especially if you fill your house with smoke and teenage sweat odour beforehand. Games like Crystal Castles I found instantly addictive, and you're reminded at how simple but highly entertaining some of these games were once you dive in. Sometimes the controls take a while to get used to. For example, playing Sprint with an analog stick rather than a steering wheel felt tricky to begin with, but it didn't take long for it to feel more natural than a gazelle in a pine field. Over in the 2600 area, you've got classic conversions of the arcade games, including Crystal Castles, which looks somewhat more blocky but yet remarkably high fidelity given the high definition resolution. The sensitivity of the paddle in Pong was a little off-putting, but a few tweaks and something playable came to fruition. The spread of the games is also pretty top-notch, with everything broken down into categories if you're into that sort of thing, and of course there's local multiplayer options and frickin' online multiplayer options. Welcome to 2016 Atari! Seriously, there's enough here to keep anyone with a slight interest in Atari retro gaming entertained for days. And it's a lot more polished than anything I've come to expect from Atari of late. I mean, sure, you could download this stuff separately and emulate it using MAME and a 2600 emulator, but that's illegal and it's time consuming and nowhere near as polished. And when you want some Atari action, you've just got to dive right in without all that faff. So, for the £12.74 price tag, do I recommend it? You're sure as hell I do. Thanks for watching this quick off-the-cuff review. I downloaded this game tonight and thought, yeah, it deserves a review, so I've done one. Please click the video below if you want some more of my stuff, or contribute to my Patreon, or just leave. In any case, thanks for watching, and good night.